Good evening, everyone, and welcome. My name is Chris Andrews. I'm doing a presentation tonight on shaping up for summer because it is getting warmer in these spring months, especially where I'm living in regional Queensland. I think today was a top of 34 degrees in my area, and obviously when we think of warmer months, we think of maybe going more outside, getting outside, going to the beach, and of course shaping up for summer is a big part of that. So in terms of the actual content we're going to be talking about is more about metabolic health and what you can do to ensure you maintain a strong metabolic health throughout your life, the rest of your life. So what is metabolic health? This is probably a good place to start. So a definition is metabolic health is the body's efficient process of converting the food energy that you consume through your diet into energy that can be used for physiological functions. So keeping yourself alive. So key health indicators that measure your metabolic health, and I'm sure you've probably heard of these before, is blood glucose, cholesterol, blood pressure, waist circumference, body mass index. So these are all indicators of metabolic health, and we'll talk about some of those in a bit more detail. Some risks of poor metabolic health relates to obesity and type 2 diabetes, and these are increasingly becoming more problematic in our society. As well as cardiovascular disease, which all often worsen together. So they often are combined with these conditions. So the importance of lifestyle changes means that we understand our metabolic health helps promote lifestyle changes for long-term wellness and disease prevention. So let's just look at some of these key statistics. So in Australia, latest data suggests that 26% of children and adolescents aged between 2 and 17 were living with overweight or obesity. And in terms of people aged 18 years or over, as many as 66% of adults were facing overweight or obesity. So 34% of adults were overweight and a further 32% were obese. And if you look back in time and you compare this back to 1995, 56% of adults were considered back then, just still more than 1 in 2 as being overweight or obese. So over that period of some 30 odd years, we've increased our rates of obesity. And significantly, the major increase has been people living with obesity, with 19% considered obese in 1995 compared to 32% obese now. In New Zealand, it's a similar sort of picture. So 67% of adults aged 18 and over are living with overweight and obesity. So New Zealand, I know, often beats Australia in the Bledisloe Cup with the rugby union. And again, here, New Zealand takes the cake by beating us with a higher rate of obesity and overweight. So 34% of adults are overweight and a further 33% are obese. And that has also increased up from 31% in 2018, 2019. And again, concerningly, 1 in 8 children aged 2 to 14 years in New Zealand are living with obesity compared to 11.4% 5 years ago. So we're heading in the wrong direction in terms of our metabolic health. I mentioned earlier on body mass index. This has been often our go-to measurement for assessing overweight and obesity. And just to give you some background, so you will see here on the screen, this is basically the classification system for the BMI. So if you're below 18.5, you're considered to be quite thin, perhaps a little too thin, so severe thinness if you're below 16. And if you're in the normal range, it's 18.5 to 25. And then as you progress higher, 25 to 30 and above. So basically, a BMI is basically your body mass divided by your height squared. Sorry, your body weight divided by your height squared. So it's an indication of how heavy you are based on your height. It's not the greatest indicator of I guess, your metabolic health, because some people can be quite lean and actually in the tending towards the higher end of the normal range. So if you're a muscular but lean athlete, you may actually be pushing towards the BMI of around 25, perhaps even in the 26, 27 range. And likewise, you might be in the normal range, but your body fat levels can be quite high. So it's not an ideal range. It's a good population indicator, but it has got its limitations. So what we're finding now is that if you take your BMI in combination with what we refer to as your waist to hip ratio, that will give you a better indication of how you're tracking in terms of your metabolic health. So basically, the leaner you are, the lower your abdominal girth is, and so you can see your lower risk of metabolic health issues. So you may have heard of the term apple shape or android shape, which basically means you carry a lot of your body fat around your internal organs, around your abdomen and internal organs. That's a very high risk for poor metabolic health. And if you've got a lower waist to hip ratio, then your metabolic health is actually a lower risk. So some health consequences of being overweight I alluded to earlier on. So we've got cardiovascular disease, that's primarily heart disease and stroke, type 2 diabetes, musculoskeletal disorders, and we're talking here primarily osteoarthritis, and also some cancers such as endometrial, breast, and colon cancers. So these conditions cause premature death and substantial disability. So just changing tact and to talk about metabolic syndrome. This may be a term that you have heard of before, or you're familiar with. So metabolic syndrome is basically a cluster of risk factors comprising of excess abdominal weight. So again, a measure of your waist hip ratio, lipid abnormalities, so high blood cholesterol, high triglycerides, low HDL, elevated glucose levels. So if you've got any one of those three, you're considered to have the metabolic syndrome. So it's not only an epidemiological clustering of risk factors, but it's also a common underlying pathophysiology cause. So insulin resistance associated with central adiposity. So basically, your body becomes resistant to insulin functioning properly due to high levels of body fat in your internal organs. So metabolic syndrome, as I said, it becomes an important identifier as a person at risk of cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, non-alcoholic fatty liver disorder or disease, which is NALFD, obstructive sleep apnea, and chronic kidney disease. So all those are high risk factors for people with metabolic syndrome. So some criteria for the clinical diagnosis of metabolic syndrome: elevated waist circumference. So this can be population specific. So if you're of Caucasian descendants, then you've got a waist to hip ratio of, a waist ratio of over 102 centimeters in men and 88 centimeters in women. If you're of Asian or Polynesian descent, it is actually lower at 90 centimeters for men and 80 centimeters for women. If you have elevated triglycerides of greater than 1.7 millimole per liter, if you have reduced high density lipoprotein cholesterol, less than 1 millimole in men and 1.3 millimole in women, elevated blood pressure, so anything greater than 130 millimeters of systolic blood pressure or greater than 85 millimeters of diastolic blood pressure. And if your elevated fasting blood glucose levels are greater than 5.5 millimoles per liter. So you need to have at least 3 of those to be considered for having a risk of metabolic syndrome. So let's look at nutrition and metabolic health. And there's a lot of information out there about weight loss and what you need to or should be doing to maintain a healthy weight or lose body fat. I think there's a lot of tinkering around the edges whereby you can go high protein, low carb, high carb, low fat. Really, the bottom line is your energy intake, energy in and energy expenditure. So the critical principles are reducing your energy intake. So limiting energy intake from total fats and shift what fat you are consuming away from saturated fats to more the unsaturated fats. Limit your intake of highly processed, energy-dense foods. So when I say energy-dense, I mean kilojoule dense or calorie-dense foods that are typically high in refined sugars, fats, and sodium. And that combination of sugars, fats, and sodium, unfortunately, makes those foods very palatable, and you want to eat more and more of those. So the food companies are very much awakened to what stimulates us to want to eat more foods. And unfortunately, those foods tend to put on the most body fat. And conversely, not only should you try and reduce your energy intake, you should also try and increase your energy expenditure, or the amount of energy you use. And the best way of doing that is to boost levels of physical activity. So trying to be as active as you can throughout the day. We often think about exercising, but it's also quite beneficial just to try and be physically active throughout the day. So try and aim for 30 minutes of regular, moderate intensity activity on most days as a bare minimum. Our bodies were born to move. Interestingly here, when it comes to food, there is something what we call volumetrics, or food density in volumetric diet. So this is really quite a neat way of looking at your food that you eat. So when you look at food, you can categorize food based on the energy density and also the volume of food that you'd have to consume that food. So the category 1 foods, which are the foods that you should be trying to focus on mostly, are the very low density foods in terms of energy. They're very high density in nutrient composition, but they're very low density in energy content. So what we're talking about there is fresh fruit, non-starchy vegetables, etc. Category 2 is low density foods, but they more include the whole grains, legumes, starchy fruits, and vegetables. Category 3, which is where you're getting more into your medium density foods, include, well, I'd actually put French fries more into your category 4, but meats and cheese, bread, cake, etc. Category 4, high density foods, including chocolate, candies, lollies, cookies, oils, chips, crackers, nuts, seeds, and butter. They are all very high density foods, so you need to try and minimize those as best you can. And again, this is another way of looking at this. I find this very, very simplistic, but a very good diagrammatic indication of how dense foods can take up more space in your intestinal, in your stomach. So oils are the most energy dense foods available. So if you're adding a lot of oil to your foods in the forms of fats or added oils, remember that they contain a lot of kilojoules and are very easy to consume a lot of those, and also a lot of energy. So there's 37 kilojoules per gram of energy in a gram of fat. Cheese and dairy are also quite energy dense. Meat is also energy dense. And as you can see, as you proceed to the right, when you're looking at your potatoes, rice and beans, fruits and veggies, you have to consume more of those to get the same amount of energy intake into the diet. And they also fill up in your stomach and produce that physical pressure against your stomach to make you feel fuller. So that's really a good indication of why whole food, plant-based foods in particular, will help keep you lean and satisfied for longer. So, very important, what you should be focusing on is to eat a diet rich in variety and based on whole food, preferably whole plant foods. So core plant-based foods. Focus on minimally processed fruits, vegetables, whole grains, legumes. Nuts and seeds, as I said, are a little bit more energy dense, but small quantities are quite beneficial. They provide some key nutrients and also a good source of protein. Health benefits of fiber. So again, these whole food plant-based foods provide a very good source of dietary fiber, which helps with your digestion, and I'll talk about later on our microbiome. They increase satiety because they actually help provide a physical presence in your stomach that pressures against your stomach, that helps you feel fuller for longer. And also they help reduce the rate of release of blood sugar into your bloodstream. Sugar into your bloodstream, elevating your blood glucose levels. So they help regulate your blood glucose effectively as well. Ensure a moderate intake of protein. So, you do not need to focus on going on high protein foods or high protein diets. There's no need for that at all. But obviously, if you're eating whole food, plant-based foods, you will get a good intake of moderate protein source. So again, whole grains, legumes, nuts, and seeds will be a good source of protein. Even leafy greens will give you a good intake of protein. In fact, a lot of people don't realize, but broccoli on a calorie basis gives you more protein per calorie or per kilojoule than an equivalent amount of steak will. Cardiovascular benefits: focus on eating predominantly whole plant-based foods to get a balance of protein, fiber, lower your intake of saturated fats, and that together combined provides cardiovascular health. Antioxidants and metabolic health. So again, plant foods gives you your best avenue for increasing your intake of carotenoids, flavonoids, vitamins, and other nutrients, so vitamin C, vitamin E. So very rich in helping provide those antioxidants and helping support insulin sensitivity and reducing your risk for metabolic disorders later in life. So some key nutrients to focus on for metabolic health. Again, your fruits and vegetables in particular will provide you a very rich source of flavonoids. So flavonoids have a very important role to play in anti-inflammatory, antioxidant actions inside the body, and they also help improve insulin sensitivity and reduce oxidative stress. Carotenoids, which are the lipid-soluble antioxidants found in fruits and vegetables, they help support fat metabolism and also act as powerful antioxidants in the body. And of course, I cannot stipulate enough the importance of fiber. So fiber to help promote satiety and stabilize blood glucose levels and support digestive health and function for better metabolic outcomes. Let's talk about the energy expenditure, so exercise and lifestyle habits. So the role of exercise improves insulin sensitivity and supports healthy metabolism, reducing risks of metabolic syndrome. In fact, recent studies have shown even if you just get out and go for a 10-minute walk around the block after you've eaten food, after you've eaten your evening meal, that will help improve your blood glucose control to no end. Aerobic exercise, which is your cardiovascular exercise, so activities like running or cycling, swimming, even brisk walking will help with burning energy and reducing visceral fat effectively. Plus, it will promote cardiovascular health. But really, the biggest bang for buck, in my opinion, is resistance training. So resistance training builds your muscle mass. And by resistance training, I'm meaning pushing against the resistance. And it has to be a pretty strong and significant resistance, so a heavy weight that stimulates muscle growth. And it's your muscle growth, your muscle mass, that is your metabolic furnace. So the greater your lean body mass, your muscle mass, the greater or the higher your metabolic rate will be. So when you're young, in your teens and early 20s, your muscle mass tends to be quite high, and that's when your metabolic rate is going to be at its highest. And if you can maintain that through your following years of aging, your 30s and your 40s, then you'll maintain that muscle mass. But if you don't keep your resistance training or moving, your body will actually start to break down your muscle tissue because it's a use it principle, and your metabolic rate slowly declines over the years. So resistance training, critically important for maintaining your metabolic health. So a combined exercise routine where you combine aerobic exercise and resistance exercises weekly enhances your overall metabolic health and fitness. So let's look at some other lifestyle habits for metabolic health. So importance of adequate sleep. Every talk I give, I always talk about the importance of getting adequate sleep. So getting 7 to 9 hours of sleep nightly helps support hormonal balance and improves insulin sensitivity. I think 9 hours would be an absolute luxury. I'm happy if I get 7 hours of sleep on a nightly basis, but certainly try and target at least a minimum of 7 hours of sleep per night. Also, stress management techniques such as mindfulness, meditation, and yoga help reduce cortisol levels and support metabolism. And of course, avoiding harmful substances such as limiting alcohol and avoiding smoking also will help prevent metabolic dysfunction and chronic diseases in life. I just want to take a little bit of time to talk about the microbiome and metabolic health, because this is a fascinating area of research, growing in awareness more and more each day. So the microbiome and metabolic health. So the role of gut microbes. The gut microbiome influences digestion, immunity, and metabolic regulation which is crucial for overall health. A balanced microbiome improves insulin sensitivity. It reduces inflammation. It supports weight management. It helps regulate your food intake, and of the impact of dysbiosis, which is an imbalance of gut bacteria, contributes to metabolic disorders such as obesity and diabetes. So the microbiome produces metabolites from the diet that affect energy balance and glucose regulation. So what are the nutrients that most impact the microbiome? It is fiber from plant foods. So they will have the best benefit at helping improve the microbiome, because it's the fiber that resists digestion in the upper intestinal tract as it makes its way down to your lower intestinal tract. It acts as a food source for those beneficial bacteria in your lower intestinal tract. And those bacteria then produce compounds such as short-chain fatty acids, secondary bile acids, and structural components that help regulate hormones that help promote feelings of fullness. And you may have heard of GLP-1 agonists, so hormones that help stimulate fullness, very important. And they help regulate your glucose metabolism, insulin sensitivity, reduce your fat storage, and also help moderate your feeding and satiety levels. So supporting the microbiome, fiber, such as in the form of prebiotics, so fiber-rich foods such as legumes, whole grains, fruits, and vegetables feed the beneficial gut bacteria and promote growth of those beneficial microbes. Fermented foods and probiotics, so fermented foods such as yogurt, kefir, sauerkraut, kimchi, introduce beneficial probiotics into the gut microbiome. I should also put in there, kombucha tea is also quite popular at the moment. Avoiding harmful factors. So if you can avoid taking antibiotics. Now, antibiotics have a very important role to play when you've got a bacterial infection. They are life-saving, but we have an over-reliance on antibiotic use. And also animal agriculture uses antibiotics to help promote the growth of the animals and reduce illness in the animals. So we need to limit the use of antibiotics, and processed foods help maintain the microbial balance of the microbiome. Microbial diversity, so enhancing the diversity of the microbiome is critically important. And the take-home message for how do you improve your microbiome diversity is to eat a wide variety of foods. So you may have heard of an activity of trying to eat at least 30 different types of foods every week, which is a very good idea, but that's really something that you need to do to help maintain that microbial diversity. So if you only eat a particular type of food, or plant food even, and you only get a particular type of fiber, then you may be missing out on other types of fiber that help support other beneficial bacteria in your gastrointestinal tract. So let's talk about some of the Neolife products for shaping up for summer. So the first one I'd like to talk about is the Neolife Shake, and I think this is a great product to help, especially people who are wanting to try and moderate their kilojoule or energy content that they consume throughout the day. So you might say, look, breakfast, I need to have something convenient, and Neolife Shake could be quite beneficial. And then I'll have lunch and dinner later on. I'll have my regular meals for lunch and dinner. So the Neolife Shake might be a very important meal replacement to help reduce your overall energy intake, but ensure you're getting an adequate supply of nutrients. So just some key benefits here. It has the glycemic response control technology, which basically just means that it is helps give you a slow, sustained release of carbohydrate into your bloodstream. There's 27 grams of lean protein source in every serve, along with 5 grams of fiber. And it's also rich in the muscle-retaining branched chain amino acids, such as leucine. Acidophilus Plus is a the Neolife probiotic that supplies particularly the important bacteria that are known to help support your gut microbiome. So again, it's intestinal targeted technologies, because a lot of these bacteria are acid sensitive, and you don't want them to be impacted by the acid of your stomach. So there is a technology that is used to help slow down the release of the probiotics, and so that they're not released until they reach the small intestine. And that's important because it helps deliver the most bacteria into your small intestine. So again, the benefits here: it helps regulates intestinal activity and promotes colon health with the support of those beneficial bacteria. There's 5 types of beneficial bacteria in Acidophilus plus, and again, no one particular probiotic is going to have all the health benefits, and it's better to have a variety of probiotics in your daily diet. CoQ10 is really important because it is an antioxidant that helps support the function of your mitochondria. And I mentioned earlier on, your muscle tissue is important important tissue for maintaining your basal metabolic rate, or your energy burn. So CoQ10 is actually quite important for helping maintain the function of your mitochondria. It's also important for your heart cardiovascular health. And the Neolife CoQ10 product has a very high dose of CoQ10 in it. All natural fiber probably doesn't get the glory that it deserves, but I think fiber is one of the most important nutrient components that we should be trying to focus on in improving and increasing every day. The average Western daily diet has about 15 grams of fiber a day if you're lucky, but the health recommendations are at least a minimum of 28 grams of fiber every day. So if you're at that 15 grams of fiber intake on a daily dose, you need to really try to be boosting that up. And again, with the all-natural fiber supplement, you can do that very easily with a single serve of fiber in that product. It also helps regulate your blood glucose metabolism by helping slow down the release of glucose into your bloodstream. Formula 4, again, if you're trying to reduce your energy intake, is a very good idea to ensure that you're fortifying your nutrient intake through a dietary supplement. Formula 4 is a complete whole food supplement, providing all your essential vitamins and minerals, plus a very important source of the phytosterols from tree and N. And also the Neolife tea, which is a very good source of green tea, white tea, and black tea, which has been shown through clinical research to help support metabolism by increasing your energy burn. So a very good fat burning formulation to have to help ensure your metabolism remains burning at a good rate. So just to conclude and go over what we've touched on, holistic metabolic health depends on diet, exercise, sleep, stress management, and gut health working together harmoniously. When it comes to diet, what you're trying to do is balance your energy intake and reduce your energy and increase your energy expenditure. So consuming more of the nutrient dense, but reducing your intake of energy dense foods. So the best way to do that is through nutritious whole foods, so wide and varied diet, particularly rich in whole plant-based foods, rich in flavonoids, carotenoids, especially fiber, will help support metabolism and reduce chronic disease risk. Gut microbiome role is particularly important. The gut microbiome, which helps regulate metabolism, should be nurtured through healthy dietary choices. So again, if you follow the nutritious whole foods, eating plenty of whole plant-based foods. And I keep emphasizing whole because once you start taking whole plant-based foods and refining those, you tend to remove a lot of the beneficial nutrients, phytonutrients, but in particular, you also tend to reduce a lot of the critically important fiber in that food. So try and go for the whole food source as opposed to a refined food source. And other lifestyle medications such as integrating nutrition, exercise, lifestyle changes will improve your blood glucose and fat loss for overall metabolic health. So I'd like to thank you for your time. I hope that was beneficial. And until next time, we'll see you again. And all the best with it, continuing on your metabolic health journey.